When John Denver's song "Take Me Home, Country Roads" became popular, it was the first time that people heard one of his best works. The singer, songwriter, and actor became one of the most famous and best-selling acoustic artists of the 1970s and stayed that way for another 20 years. Denver was more than just a well-known singer. He was a role model, but when Denver wasn't in front of the camera, his personal life was so shocking that fans couldn't believe it was the same artist they loved and admired. The bad news about Denver, from confessions from ex-wives to reports of his illegal actions, was more true than his fans thought. After years of guessing, the man's real nature has finally been shown, and it's even stranger than anyone thought. His real name at birth was Henry John Duckendorf. On December 31, 1943, Denver grew up in Roswell, New Mexico with a family that loved flying. This is what many boys dream of. In the Air Force, his dad, Captain Henry Duckendorf Sr., flew a bomber called the B-58 Hustler and set 3 speed marks. Soldiers looked up to the man as a hero, and the Air Force even put him in its Hall of Fame. But for young Denver, the uncertain nature of military life was the bad thing about this dream life. The family had to move around a lot. In a short time, they lived in Arizona, Alabama, and Texas. Denver never stayed in one place long enough to make close friends, which was a shame. It was time to move again, just as he was getting used to where he was. He felt alone, and like he didn't really belong anywhere because of this. He had that feeling all his life. Denver's grandmother gave him a special gift when he was 11 years old and lived in Tucson, Arizona. It was an old Gibson guitar. It was made in 1910. It was more than 40 years old by the time it got to Denver. He used this guitar to make songs that made him feel better when he was feeling lonely. It became a sign of stability for him. Soon after, he moved up to singing with the Tucson, Arizona Boys Chorus. There, he learned how to sing with others and give performances. He was already singing folk songs at small shows when he was in high school. Songs were more than just a fun thing to do. It helped him find his place in the world, which was always moving and had his strict father in it. Dutch, Denver's dad, always pushed him to be the best at everything. But Denver was just a simple person who loved writing songs. This often made things hard between the father and son. In spite of that, they both loved flying very much. They could finally do something fun together after Denver learned how to fly. It brought them together. Maybe the activity's danger made them think about how important it is to have live loved ones. That same risk would play a terrible part in Denver's life much later on. The freedom Denver felt when he flew stayed with him and could be heard a lot in his music. He went to Texas Tech University after high school to study architecture, but he quickly decided he didn't want to make buildings. He wished to make tunes. He quit school and went to Los Angeles. He chose to change his last name around that time. Denver was his pick. He chose the name of the state's capital after the mountains and rivers he loved. It felt like a new start. Denver had a big break in the middle of the 1960s. He was picked as the lead singer of the Chad Mitchell Trio out of about 200 singers who tried out. This was his first real chance to make it in the music business. It gave him the chance to play in front of people all over the country. He was with the group for about 2 years and put out 3 records. He felt better about his singing after going on stage. It was hard to live on the road, but Denver took it all in and slowly found his voice. Leaving on a Jet Plane was one of his most well-known songs at that time. In the late 1960s, the folk group Peter, Paul and Mary covered it. By the end of that decade, it had become a #1 hit on the Billboard charts. Denver wasn't a well-known solo singer yet, but that song showed that people could really relate to his writing. Denver didn't look back after the group broke up. On his own, he was already making his way up the charts. Denver made it look like it was easy to go from being in a group to being a single star. When his big record Poems, Prayers and Promises came out in the early 1970s, it really took off in his career. Many people loved the song Take Me Home, Country Roads, but it almost didn't happen. The first copies of the song didn't sound right, and it looked like it might not work for a while. There was still hope though, thanks to his new boss Jerry Weintraub. He tried to get radio stations in Denver, Colorado to play the song. A lot of people liked it after it came out in mid-April. It got to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 by the end of August. It became a gold record that same month after selling over 1 million copies. People liked the song over the years, and it sold more than 1.5 million digital copies in the US alone after all these years. West Virginia made it one of their official state songs because of how much it meant to them. They recorded it on their own. Denver then put out a new record in 1972 called Rocky Mountain High, which came out in September. It was his 6th record, and the first one to make it to the US Top 10. On the Billboard 200 list, it got as high as number 4. Rocky Mountain High, the album's title track, became one of his most popular songs and made it into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 in 1973. It reached number 29 on the year-end chart that same year and became a favorite among nature lovers and being outside. Slaughterhouse Falls in Aspen, Colorado, is where the record cover was taken. This makes the song even more personal for Denver. After many years, Rocky Mountain High was chosen as one of Colorado's 2 official state songs. Denver had the best years between 1974 and 1975. 4 of his songs made it to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in just 18 months. In March 1974, Sunshine on My Shoulders became the number 1 song in the country. Then, in July, came Annie's song. On May 15, 1975, Thank God I'm a Country Boy was the number 1 song. In September of that same year, I'm Sorry came in second. The range of his skills was shown in these songs. Some, like Sunshine on My Shoulders, were kind and positive. Some were very lively, like Thank God I'm a Country Boy and Happiness. Annie was his wife, and he wrote the song in just 10 minutes. It became a famous wedding song. In this point of time, Denver was on the radio, TV, and in millions of homes across the land. He also put out 3 records that all went to number 1 during this time. When Denver's Greatest Hits came out in 1973, it sold more copies than any other album in RCA Records history. It sold more than Elvis Presley did. When it came out in 1974, his record Back Home Again went triple platinum in the US. Then, in 1975, he put out Windsong, which became a double platinum hit. All 3 of these records showed that Denver was a real music star. After all his hard work, he had made around 300 songs, and he had written about 200 of them himself. He won 12 gold albums and 4 platinum albums, altogether. That makes him one of the most popular singer-songwriters of the 1970 sets. His songs sold over 33 million copies around the world. Denver's move into Hollywood was a surprise, but it worked out well. Denver appeared in the hit movie Oh God with comedy legend George Burns in 1977. Even though he had never been in a movie before, people liked him because he was friendly and honest. Carl Reiner directed the movie, which was based on a book by Avery Corman. It was about a normal grocery store manager who was picked by God to share a word from God. The way Denver played his part felt real, which made it easy for people to connect with him. The movie did really well. It made more than $51 million, 0 cents, in the US, and was even nominated for an Oscar for Best Script. Denver didn't back up the movie with any more parts, but his first job showed that he could do more than just sing. He was one of the few singers who could make the switch to acting. Even though some people didn't think he could, Denver became well known outside of the US. Jerry Weintraub, Denver's manager, thought it was important for him to talk to fans in other countries. So, even though there were some questions, Weintraub set up a series of TV specials for people in Britain. He said that they would go straight to the people, since the reviewers wouldn't make Denver a star. The plan worked out great. Many people in Britain and across Europe became big fans of Denver because of his friendly attitude and clear singing voice. It was clear from these shows that TV could be a great way to get people to know artists, and became a worldwide star with their help. An Evening with John Denver, his special, even won a Primetime Emmy Award, which is one of the highest awards in TV. He sang his own songs, told stories and acted with friends on many other specials. His music was played in homes all over the country and the world thanks to these shows. That's what made him one of the most popular performers of his time. Every show felt like it was just for him. Denver was more than just a singer though. He spoke to the US Senate in the middle of the 1980s, At that time, parents wanted warning signs on music that they thought was too rude. Denver fought for free speech, even though he was known for his soft songs. Rocky Mountain High, one of his songs, was once taken down because people thought it was about drugs when it wasn't. He told the truth and fought for the freedom to say what you think. A lot of people thought he would back warning signs, but he didn't. The way people talk about music and free speech has changed since then, and those changes are still being felt today. Denver was the first American artist in more than 10 years to appear in the Soviet Union during the Cold War that same year. He performed in 11 places, such as Moscow, Leningrad, and Tallinn. It wasn't just music on his trip. The goal was to bring two different nations together. His songs and message of peace touched people even if they didn't understand English. He wrote a song called Let Us Begin after the trip that called for peace instead of war. An album called Live in the USSR was made from recordings made on that trip. After the Chernobyl nuclear accident in the late 1980s, Denver went back to the Soviet Union, which made a lot of people leave their homes and hurt their health badly. A show in Moscow that made a lot of money for good causes had him singing. The records brought in more money. Politics had nothing to do with that night. Kindness and care were important. The crowd felt like they were seen and heard. Denver proved that a single guitar player could make a big difference. He took his songs to China in the early 1990s. People in China were interested in him, after being cut off from the rest of the world for years. Schools already sang songs like Country Roads. He went on tour with the government, and one of his shows was shown to more than 2 billion people around the world. People had hoped that the show would take place in a famous place, like the Forbidden City or the Temple of Heaven. Young people in China accepted him with open arms, and even the leader of the country had noticed years before. At that time, his trip made him one of the most well-known Western musicians in China. Denver became more interested in helping other people as he got older. He put out a best hits album called Homegrown in the 1990s. The album's sales money were all given to help homeless people. He also helped start the World Hunger Project around this time. He got the Presidential World Without Hunger Award for his work. He also worked for environmental issues and used his fame to get more people to care about and support the earth. Denver started the Plant It 2000 project, which was all about planting trees and restoring woods. He also started the WindStar Foundation. It became just as important to him to do good things for other people as it was to make music. But his personal life was very sad. It all seemed like a dream when he got married to Annie Martel. They took in 2 kids together, and Denver wrote Annie's song in just 10 minutes. They had problems with each other though, as his fame grew. Annie often thought nothing was there and got lost in his shadow. They chose to split up in the early 1980s. After that, things got messy and hurt. Denver was usually nice to people in public, but when he was alone, he was very rude. It was said that he got angry and hard to predict. It was very painful and angry to get divorced. The other day, Denver lost it after Annie cut down some of his favorite oak trees at their Aspen home. To avoid a fight, he showed up with a chainsaw and broke up their furniture. He cut their bed in half with a saw. It was a shocking scene that showed a marriage that had broken down. Many people who knew the soft-spoken singer couldn't believe it was the same person. But Denver was the one who filed for divorce. The court papers said that he had been abused, which hurt his image of being good and clean. Some of Denver's past managers even said he had a bad temper, and Annie's friends were on her side. Ellen didn't say anything after the divorce, but Denver's image was already hurt. A lot of people who used to admire him changed their minds about him. In the middle of the 1980s, Denver met Cassandra Delaney for the first time at a hotel in Sydney. He was playing in the hotel bar and fell in love with her right away. They fell in love quickly. In the late 1980s, they got married in the mountains in front of close family and friends. At first, it seemed like a fairy tale, but things went wrong right away. In the end, Cassandra said it was hard to be with a famous man. Denver was a lot older than she was. They were famous for him, and his moods would change quickly. In public, they looked great, but things were tense behind closed doors. Their daughter Jessie was born in the late 1900s. Denver had thought for a long time that he couldn't have kids because of a sickness he had as a child. Being able to have Jessie felt like a blessing. Some people even thought they might have used medical help to have her. Since Jessie was born, Denver has been stricter. He became more detached and jealous. Cassandra could tell. The weak bonds in their relationship started to break down. A magazine in Australia asked Cassandra to do an interview in the middle of the 1990s. She said that Denver didn't have any real friends. The staff was scared of him. A lot of secretaries cried and quit. Everyone thought he was nice. But Cassandra said it was all a show. He was often mean and angry when he was alone. He yelled at her, drank a lot, and tried to run her life, she said. For a long time, she didn't say anything because she hoped he would change. In the early 1990s, they broke up, and a couple of years later, the divorce was final. The court case was tough. Denver went after Cassandra for a few $1 million and said she made him look stupid. Cassandra fought hard to keep Jessie. Denver wrote about this in his book After the Fact. He said the breakup hurt him a lot. He was never the same after that. His book, Take Me Home, came out in the middle of the 1990s. A lot of fans were shocked. He wrote about how he used drugs like cocaine, LSD and weed. He also said that he had cheated on both of his wives. Even during his first marriage to Annie Martel, the subject of the song Annie's Song, he had many affairs. In his writing, he said that he had been angry at times. One story stood out. During a fight, he cut a bed in half with a chainsaw. People no longer saw him as clean. Fans saw a side of him they never thought possible. In the 1970s, Denver was one of the most famous singer-songwriters in the United States. Many people loved his soft singing and acoustic style, which helped him get to the top of the music charts. RCA, his record company, helped him make 25 songs, 13 of which went gold and 8 of which went platinum. That album of his biggest hits sold more copies than any other record RCA ever had. Things began to change in the middle of the 1980s though. A lot of synths and drum machines were being used in new types of music. Denver's sound didn't fit anymore. When RCA was sold to General Electric in 1986, the company chose to focus on new acts to save money. They let Denver go, even though he had a long and good relationship with them. He was shocked. He had just finished recording One World, which he thought would be his next album with them. He was sure that they would continue his contract. RCA preferred to move on instead. They thought that other artists could make them more money. Denver said that they had forgotten about him, even though he had made them a lot of money over the years. Since he couldn't get signed to any other label, he had to put out his next records on his own. Even big stars can fall behind when business goals and music styles change. That was a hard lesson to learn. Denver flew for more than 20,000 hours over the years. He got permission to fly gliders, single-engine and multi-engine planes, and even planes that are lighter than air. But in the 1990s, his personal problems started to get the best of him. There were 2 times that Denver was caught for driving while drunk. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, did something, because pilots need to have a proper medical certificate to show they are healthy enough to fly. They would not renew his medical clearance after his second arrest. That paper wasn't needed for his pilot's license to be valid. In order to get it back, he would have had to show that he was no longer drinking too much. But he never did that. He used to love flying the most, but now even that was taken away from him. It got worse when he did what the FAA told him to do. They sent him signed letters telling him to hand over his medical certificate, but he either didn't read them or sent them back without opening them. This opened up a legal loophole. It was impossible for the FAA to take away his license because he never replied to the letters. He could still fly on paper, but not because he was physically able to. It was only because the system needed him to work with it. In March 1997, that hole was finally closed. Denver signed for a letter from the FAA that was official. That meant they could officially keep him from going anywhere. After that, every trip he took was against the law. To get his flying privileges back, he would have had to show that he was sober and follow all the rules he had been breaking for years. Denver didn't do that though. He was still able to fly though. On October 12, 1997, he flew a small trial plane that he had just bought. He was practicing landing and taking off near Monterey, California. He had only had the plane for one day and had only spent 30 minutes with a teacher before he was able to fly it by himself. The plane had been changed a lot, making it hard to fly. Most of the trouble came from the fuel control valve. It was put behind the pilot's left shoulder, which is hard to get to. Denver had to twist in his seat and reach back in a weird way to switch tanks. It was hard to turn the valve without pliers. Also, the fuel readings were behind him, making it hard for him to read them. He had to use a handheld mirror to look at them, and the results were still not clear. He flew near Monterey Peninsula Airport that morning and practiced takeoffs and landings, using up all the fuel in the left tank. People who were there heard the engines sputter and then stop. He tried to switch to the right tank when the gas ran out. He had to reach behind him and turn the valve with pliers. During that process, he pressed the right rudder pedal by mistake. The plane's nose dropped quickly and it crashed into the Pacific Ocean in a matter of seconds. Denver was killed right away. It was found by the National Transportation Safety Board that Denver had only about 3 gallons of fuel in one tank and 6 gallons in the other when the flight began. They said that the fact that he didn't know much about the plane was a big part of why it crashed. They also talked about the dangerous changes to the design that made it almost impossible to switch fuel tanks in the middle of a flight. Denver knew how to fly an aeroplane well, but he wasn't ready to fly this one. There was a clear way to avoid the crash in the report. Denver might not have had the crash if he had refueled, trained more, or flown a plane with a safer fuel system. It was sad to see that his last flight showed how small mistakes and ignoring signs can lead to a terrible end. The death of Denver in the late 1990s was not only sad, but it also served as a wake-up call. Many fans were sad about the death of a well-known folk singer, but the crash also showed a more difficult side of his personal life. Denver loved flying so much that he would sometimes do dangerous things. He was known to fly and do wing tricks with the engine off, even when he wasn't medically cleared to do so. These acts showed a pattern of going too far, sometimes in dangerous ways. Even after being told off several times and having his medical permit taken away, he kept flying. A lot of bad decisions were also shown by the crash. Flying with little fuel, in an aeroplane that has known design flaws, and by yourself, without filing a flight plan. These choices were not made by chance. They did a lot of dangerous things that led to tragedy as a whole. Even though no drugs or alcohol were found in his body after the crash, his image was already bad because he had been arrested before for driving while drunk, and in the mid-1990s for an accident that happened while he was drunk. Denver's reputation has stayed strong, even with these flaws. People all over the world are still moved by his music, which has deep emotional themes of peace and love for the earth. People still love folk and country songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's Song, and Rocky Mountain High. Taking care of the environment was also a big part of his job before it became popular. He was one of the first famous musicians to do this. In the end, people will remember John Denver for how deeply he loved music and nature, not for the bad people he chose to be. His 15-foot bronze figure at Red Rocks Amphitheater is a great way for fans to remember how great the man who drove those country roads was.